Well, the image is one thing, and a human being is another. You know, it's very hard to live up to an image. I'll put it that way.
In terms of sound quality, all three of these sound great. They are all soundboards. None of them are audience recordings. They are mastered by Jan Eliasson. All three of these shows were on bootlegs to some extent, with the July 29th and August 1st show being full bootlegs back in the day, and the first show, the July 24th show, was a partial bootleg. Now, in terms of all three of these shows, none of them are audience recordings. They're all great soundboards. Two of these soundboards were recently not even known to have existed to most of us collectors. Audience recordings were all we had at that point. However, Elvis in these three shows does sound tired, and the soundboards does make that a little more prevalent. In all three of these shows, as well for the summer stretch of this 1976 tour, Elvis would be sporting the bicentennial jumpsuit nearly every show, which was probably one of the worst jumpsuits in terms of looking cool. It's certainly no American Eagle, and it's certainly nothing from 1972 with a very cool looks. This one is the bicentennial suit, so it's a very patriotic suit, but in terms of looks, it's not the greatest, as it's more of a vest look with some puffy sleeves attached to it. So the intros in all three of these shows also drag on, and they aren't split up in a very listenable sense, and they're all pretty grueling, taking at least 10 minutes per show, as Elvis is visibly tired and using a good portion of the show to handle these intros and give himself some much needed rest that he was not given by the Colonel at this point. Starting with the July 24th show, this is a show where Elvis is visibly tired. He was flown in late the night before and had barely gotten much sleep. He mentions that he hasn't gotten a lot of sleep when he makes the jokes that he's got to start waking things up, as he's only been up for an hour, so this already alludes to Elvis being tired. He also mentions that the stage lights, he wants to shoot them out. Elvis probably had glaucoma at this point too, so that's going to be very harmful on his eyes with all of the flash bulbs and the bright stage lights, so that's also going to add to Elvis's uncomfortableness on stage. The highlight of the show for me was the "If You Love Me, Let Me Know." I feel like for the time period that this was, Elvis did a surprisingly strong version for this show, so I was very appreciative of that. One thing that this show doesn't have is Polk Salad Annie. There is no Polk Salad Annie in this show. And this is an extremely short show. It clocks in at less than an hour, and the other highlight of the show, I would say, was Elvis saw an Elvis for President sign and said he could barely handle this, let alone running the country, which I found to be very, very amusing and a nice little fun bit of listening there. Moving on to the July 29th show, the highlight of this show was definitely "And I Love You So." This was just very well performed, Elvis really hitting it. It's not a super challenging song for him vocally at this point, which is good, because this is a time when Elvis would really use the on-off switch, and that's really prevalent in this second show, this July 29th show. And what I mean by the on and off switch, Elvis, when he needed to hit some really big notes, would just turn it on like a light switch and be able to perform it, and then he would kind of waver the rest of the show and kind of just make his way through it, as his body was definitely tired and Elvis was definitely under rested. So this show was an hour and 8 minutes, so this was a lot longer of the show than the July 24th show. So 5 days later, Elvis did a 12-minute longer show, so you got that in there. He did do Polk Salad Annie in that one, so there's some of that extension right there. Moving on to the final show, the August 1st show. This show clocked in at an hour, and the best portion of this one was definitely the impromptu return to sender. It's always really cool when Elvis throws in a really old track that he doesn't typically perform on an impromptu spurt. Those are always enjoyable just because it breaks up from the typical set list that was pretty stale at this point for all of us who are continuing to listen to these FTDs just to hear more of Elvis's performances. So it's always nice to get a different break in there. So I was very happy to see that. So in terms of that is my review for these three shows from the Summer of 76 FTD set. This is definitely a collector's must, especially if you want these three soundboards, two of which were unknown and you previously only have the audience recordings. And in terms of the packaging, like I said, it is very good. You can go ahead and get this, I believe, at Shop Elvis and Graceland's website. This is not sponsored. I just wanted to share my video with you guys and share my thoughts on the product and Elvis's show. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching. May God bless you. And until we meet again, adios.